Morning, everyone. Okay. Today we're going to be concluding our reading of India and the Red Book, Overtones and Undertones. Um, and this piece, as all of you know, um, that I'm reading from this book, Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions by Murray Stein and Thomas Arst, editors. And this particular essay is written by Noah Schwartz-Feuerstein. We're halfway through it. If you missed the first half, please go back and listen to last week's session. Um, we'll continue momentarily since I get my screen set up so I can see everybody's brilliant comments. Good morning, Librat. Nice to see you today. Um, okay. Waiting. Okay, so this is from the essay India and the Red Book, Overtones and Undertones. And we are on page 305. This is volume 2 of this series, Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions. And this is a subtitle within this essay entitled Waiting. Yet another challenge that Jung meets on his journey is the distress of waiting. My soul spoke to me and said, wait. I heard the cruel word. Where is your patience? Your time has not yet run its course. Unquote. Can you not wait? Should everything fall into your lap ripe and finished? Unquote. That's where the quote ends. Sorry. The Upanishads also teach that a long wait inevitably precedes knowledge of Atman, the self. For example, in the Chandogya Upanishad, Indra, messenger of the gods, and Virochana, uh, messenger of the demons, arrive at Prajapati's ashram seeking knowledge of Atman. Prajapati makes them wait 32 years before answering their request. The demon takes his leave after the first stage, thinking he has already achieved true knowledge of the self, the knowledge that, quote, your body is yourself, unquote. But Indra waits another 32 years until he learns that his self is the self that lives in the dreams of the night, quote unquote. 32 years later, he learns that the self is that which exists in, quote, dreamless sleep, unquote. But Indra is not satisfied with this answer either. This time, he only has to wait another 5 years to receive the answer about the true nature of the self. Quote, that is why people say, quote, for 101 years did Bhagavan Indra live as a celibate student with Prajapati, unquote. Real knowledge demands waiting and is not found in the intellect, but is rather experiential and transformative and requires years of turning inward. Jung realizes that in order to arrive at the deeper self, he must wait in utter loneliness for spiritual ripening. True knowledge, as taught by the pundit Professor Gangadhar Bhatt, is foretold. It requires learning from a teacher, discussion with others, reflection, and waiting for the endowment of understanding, unquote. All right. So I just want to mention that in the last 2 weeks, I've been reading James Hillman's book, The Soul's Code, and I hope that you will read it. And I'm putting on my headset so that I can hear Michelle because Michelle has joined us. Good morning, Michelle. Nice to see you.
Morning.
And now I can hear you, I guess. I hope. Can you speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yes, I hear you.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Um, and good morning, Cherie. Nice to see you. Uh, you did listen to the advanced reading class on October 16th. Thank you. I will be posting after this session, I will be posting the remainder of the advanced reading group classes on the book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, as they've taken place so far. We're only a few pages into this book, but it's Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And I guess I'll have to knock off my. Ah, yes. Where did all this go? Knock off my uh, cloaking so that I can show you this. All right, no cloaking. Um, Women Who Run with the Wolves, uh, myths and stories of the wild woman archetype by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Now, this is the book that we are discussing every Wednesday in in the advanced reading group at 5 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, which happens to be U.S. Standard Eastern Standard Time at the moment. And it's going to take us quite some time to get through this book. Uh, we've already had about 7 or 8 sessions, and we are on page 59 of a nearly, well, a 450-page book. So there's plenty left to go. And so if you would like to join us, please do so. Uh, I will, let me see, I will look for and pull up for you the link so that you could join us if you wish. And how have you been,
I've
Michelle?
been doing okay. Yeah, I've been keeping busy. You?
Oh, very busy. Crazy busy.
Yeah, the
Crazy busy.
holidays, there's a lot of stuff going on and like
Yeah,
grading and stuff in school.
yeah. And let's see, what am I looking for?
We are reading Indian Undertones
Oh,
in
I
the
know.
Red Book.
I'm sorry. I know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for link to the advanced reading group. So let me get that. Wednesdays. All right. All right. So you can join the advanced reading group at this link. I think that'll all fit. Yep, it all seems to have fit every Wednesday. And it's the same link. It's been the same link for years, and it's going to stay the same link. And let's see. I was going to put one more thing. This is the coordinates to the link plus the coordinates. Sign up for our MailChimp, which I have not been using. See, it seems I can't get it all in, so I'm going to remove some of those nice words at the beginning. Okay, so this is the link to the MailChimp, and I haven't been using it lately because it stopped cooperating with me. So I, um, you have to take that link now and keep it because that's the link. As this, I haven't been announcing this session either. But I'm going to start being more fastidious about it by the beginning of next year. I'm just terribly busy in the middle of stuff right now, and so I haven't had a chance to figure out everything that's happening on social networking and all that stuff. And tomorrow's a special day. Tomorrow is the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Marine Corps. And
Oh,
I will be going to school in uniform tomorrow. And I've ordered this huge sheet cake that's going to be red, and it's going to have little golden bells on it and a picture suitable to the 250th birthday of the Marine Corps. I had a cake like that made once before when our oldest midshipman that we sponsored at the Naval Academy was a plebe, and I got myself in uniform that day as well, and I carried this cake up into Bancroft Hall and delivered it to this young man who I'm sure was crazy embarrassed by it, but I wanted to make point, so I did it.
nice.
It's archetypal. Never mind. Anyway, so everybody at the beginning of this chat on YouTube now has available to them, and these chats are not available after this program each week. So you need to make a note of it now while we're online. And we have an advanced reading group, which is sort of semi-private every Wednesday at 5 p.m. And we have done a lot of things in that advanced reading group over the last 5 or 6 years, including doing the entirety of Mysterium Conjunctionis, which took 45 weeks. And we did the entirety of Ion, which took 32 weeks. And we did the entirety of Answer to Job, which took something like 30 weeks also. And so all of those videos I still have in the can, but I've never published them because the advanced reading group up until now has been private. However, I have permission from the members to start publishing them. And so I'm going to start with Women Who Run with the Wolves publishing because it's current. It's what we're doing now. And then I'll go back and work on some of these other books that we've discussed over the years in great length, which I'll be putting up on the YouTube channel over, I don't know, the next 2 or 3 months or so, maybe longer. There's a lot of video there. There's 2 hours times however many weeks there have been since we started. So that's a lot. Uh,
Sounds like a project.
and Shuri asked me, do you know the Jungian analyst Roderick Mann, the interpretation of Jung and Wolfgang Pauli, 1955? No, I do not. And but that's not unusual. There are a lot of Jungian analysts out there in the world now. And I'm sure they're all very capable as analysts. And I've currently been reading James Hillman's book, The Soul's Code. And Hillman was the dean of the C.G. Jung Institute in Zurich for about 25 years. Then he came back to the U.S. and he developed um, a a more advanced, I think, approach to psychology even than Jung's, which is called archetypal psychology. And he's written a lot of books, and I've just read The Soul's Code. I finished it this morning, and it's available for $5.90 on audible.com. So it's really inexpensive, 10 hours to listen to it. And it's really an amazing book to teach you about how to raise your children, and it's really a psychology for children. And so I'm anxious to
Mm.
share it with some of my fellow faculty members at my school. I've already shared it with the principal, and I think it's going to make a lot of difference. I hope so. In terms of what we do. But
You know,
anyway, go ahead.
in schools now, they are having like to hire teachers or social workers to conversate with the kids because they're not having conversations at home.
Right.
And I forget what it's doing, but it's doing something to them.
Well, I think it's not good, honestly, because um, our psychology, our professional psychology practice in the world is heavily influenced by Freud at the moment. And Freud was interested in the railroad tracks of life. He wanted to have he wanted to explain everything. Freud himself never discuss discuss more than one archetype. His He discovered the archetype of Oedipus, and he thought everything was dependent upon Oedipus. So he was stuck on sexuality, as you probably know, and and the reality is that we've now discovered probably hundreds of archetypes, including mother, father, and onward from that. Many, many different archetypes. Um, the hero and the archetypes of Star Trek, for example, where you had the psychologist and uh, the heroic captain and the innocent, the child on the spacecraft, and the warrior who was Worf. All those are different archetypes, and the reason it was so popular is because it resonates with everyone, right?
Yeah. I mean, I remember when I discovered Star Trek. I was actually very popular as a kid or
Uh,
at that school. And then I was like, this is more important. I like this better. I don't want to talk about the Babysitters Club.
yeah, and Right. And my problem growing up was I was always sort of in the wasteland because I couldn't understand why at holidays all the men were watching the football games and sometimes the basketball games, whatever, what have you. And the women were all out in the kitchen discussing having babies and, washing clothes and how to make a certain dish and that sort of thing. And I wasn't into any either of those uh, very much. I'm now following uh, Navy football a bit, only in the last couple of years. I used to watch it only for the Army Navy game, but now, because I live right next to the stadium, um,
Oh,
um,
really?
uh,
That's
well, not right.
amazing.
My school is literally across the street from the stadium, and so what happens is on Navy home games, we park cars in our parking lot and typically we raise about $5,000 for every home game, and that money is used for our kids to take them on field trips and that sort of thing. So anyway, because I've been helping park cars, um, and mainly trying to persuade people to go into our parking lot instead of the stadium parking lot, um, I've gotten more into it. And when I do that, I wear Marine Corps uh, sweatshirt or t-shirt and a hat and all that stuff. So I remind everybody that I'm a Marine and, you ought to do what the Marines type of thing. I mean, that's what it is. And so
Yes,
we,
well, go Army.
yeah, well, the Navy saved Notre Dame in 1940 because when the war was kicking off, all the men started to go enlist, and Notre Dame didn't have a student body, and it was dying on the vine, the University of Notre Dame, and so um, the I think it's Jesuit brothers who founded Notre Dame, um, went to uh, the chief of naval operations and the secretary of the Navy and said, well, could you put an NROTC unit at Notre Dame so that we can have students and we can have cash flow? And so they did, but the Navy made a condition, and that was we'll put an NROTC unit at Notre Dame, provided Notre Dame plays Navy every year in football. Well,
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, well, Notre Dame is uh, like one of the Big Ten or something, or I think it's the Big Ten that they're a member of. But Navy's football team is, I guess it averages about 100 pounds per man less than the Notre Dame team. Right? And so the result is Navy has only won this game uh, twice in the last 50 years that I know of, or 55 years probably now, because the one time I don't know how they won um, in 2009 or 10. I wasn't following that closely at the time, but I do remember that Navy won when Roger Staubach was playing for Navy, who won the Heisman Trophy that year. And um, so anyway,
I understand about the students not having students. South Bend, Indiana is like
who wants
crazy.
who wants to be there,
No one wants to be
and
there.
if you go look at Notre Dame, the best thing on the campus is the touchdown Jesus at the end of the football field, on the side of one of their buildings, which happens to be at the one end of the can of the football field, there's a wall, and somebody painted a mural of Jesus holding up his hands
Mhm.
as a blessing, but it looks like he's saying he's a official saying this is a touchdown, right? So anyway, the Navy, it's archetypal that every year the Navy goes and gets slaughtered by Notre Dame. Yesterday it was 49-10. and and it's intended to keep the midshipmen humble so that they can work hard and be prepared for the Army Navy game, which is the only game that counts for Navy. You know, the coach can lose every game all season, but if he loses the Army Navy game, he loses his job traditionally.
That's funny.
So, so that's archetypal. But anyway, those are some of the things to talk about. Now, I was looking for one other thing, and that was, oh my God, I really screwed up my, let's see if I have it here in some other form. Okay, just a second. Oh, come on, where's my painting? Okay, anyway, I wanted to, uh, some of you may remember my painting, which is called Tracks to Nowhere Through Magnificence. And I can't find it at the moment conveniently, but I always talk about it in conjunction with this image, which I will share. Uh, and oops, let's do this. Oh, come on. Okay, there we go. All right, so there's the image. And you are here. That little pale blue dot is um, everything that every creature on the earth ever developed uh, has been done on that pale blue dot. And so my painting is meant to talk about uh, tracks to nowhere through magnificence, which means that here we are in nowhere, this little pale blue dot out in the universe, and we don't know any place else that has life on it as yet. And we may know about it someday, but we don't know about it now. And so we have to keep in mind that Freud thought everything was going to be decided based on um, rules, okay? and and in Jungian psychology that we talk about, there are no rules. We have to um, just observe things. And so this book of Hillman's called The Soul's Code basically says that we are all born with an acorn, uh, with a with a urge to become what we become, and and so it's coded into us. And although it is affected by things in the outside world, there are 8.5 billion of us that all have our own acorn. And so we can't control everything, but we know where we're called to be, where we're our calling. And so when you, Michelle, offer to read Mako with me, that's a calling. Okay, that the idea that it might be necessary for us at some point, maybe over my Christmas holiday, to read that book together. That's a calling, okay? And it's a calling because it's important. People need to understand the things that are in that book, even though they are erotica.
Well, I have ideas about that, like the censorship on human bodies. I mean, what a way to control people,
Right.
um, to keep them contained.
Yeah. Sure. And that's what society always wants to do is contain people. They never want to um, let people just be who they were intended to be. And, I think back on my time when I joined the Marines, for example, it was the height of the Vietnam War, 1967, March the 7th, to be precise, that I took the oath the first time, March 7th, 1967. Um, and everybody, a lot of people were trying to avoid the draft, including our illustrious president. And instead of avoiding the draft, um, I I was called to be in the Marine Corps. And the reason was I had grown up wanting to be a naval officer like my father, who had gone to the Naval Academy, um, but at that time you had to have perfect vision in order to go to the Naval Academy. So I couldn't even go to Navy OCS because of my vision. So when the Marines were there, the Marines have always been uh, around on naval bases. In those days, they also guarded the naval bases. And so I was very familiar with the Marines, and I was uh, a rival of the Army, let's say. My spirit was a rival of the Army because of the Army Navy game, which is a silly reason, but nonetheless, that's true. And so when the Marines came around to my campus, even though I went to a little lefty college, um, I joined the Marines. And so I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps the same day that my classmates were commissioned uh, in the Navy. If I had gone to the Naval Academy, that it was the same day I would have been commissioned an ensign instead of a second lieutenant. So, um, and I don't think my father wanted me to be in the Navy, and certainly not during the Vietnam War. There was a lot going on. And so, as a parent, he was probably protective of me. And so, when I called him up and told him I'd signed up for the Marine Corps, I think he was pretty shocked. But anyway, there it is. There it is. And yes, I did go to Vietnam, and that's a story for another day. But um, so Cherie says daycare workers, we don't have enough. Daycare is so expensive in America. Grandparents still, some having to work and women having to stay at home at homes or work from home. Uh, did one see the full moon on November 4th and 5th? Yes, I did. Took some beautiful photographs. Great. High art. Okay. Now let's go on with this essay. So we were talking about India, India in the Red Book, and observations and or overtones and undertones.
Oh, I have a
Go ahead.
story that
Go, please.
um do you know Rudolf Steiner?
I know the
He
name,
did
certainly.
this group called Anthroposophy,
Uh-huh.
and he like knew all the like he studied with all the theosophists at that time, and he related a story about how Madame Blavatsky, when she was came over here and started her group, the CIA wanted to recruit them, because
uh,
they're sensitive to the trends and stuff.
right, right.
But then they found out that they were too influenced by Indian culture to like be malleable. So
Uh,
after that, they were like, no more Americans.
well, yeah, they went to Ojai, California, and I think Cherie was born in Ojai. Went to high school there, as a matter of fact, or one of our followers at least. I think pretty sure it was Cherie, and uh, and that's where Krishnamurti went when he came to the United States and became an American. And this was after he had disavowed being the Messiah, which Blavatsky was selling at the time uh, for quite a while.
Um,
Yeah,
Krishnamurti, his favorite quote I like from him is, "You're a scared chicken."
you're scared,
You're a scared chicken.
right? Well, we all have to forge ahead with our kernel, what we are meant to be, and so now, as I look at it and I look at what I'm called to do, I definitely feel called to do the teaching that I do right now, although not all of it, but what I do with children, I feel called to do. And even though these are the most difficult students in my county, and given sufficient time, I may be able to change people's perspective on how we deal with these kids, uh, because I've had some breakthroughs with some kids recently that suggest that what we are doing isn't necessarily the right thing, but what I'm doing, which is basically storytelling, where Jungians are storytellers first, just as you were a storyteller with the Blavatsky story. Um, we're meant to do something, and each of us is meant to do something, and we're called to that thing throughout our lives. And if I go back and retrace my steps, um, I can say that, okay, I joined the Marine Corps in 1967 so that I can do what I'm going to do tomorrow, which is to wear my dress blue uniform to this school for troublesome kids and bring a birthday cake to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Marine Corps. And that in its turn will awaken some kernel in one of these kids who might go out and become, who knows, a heroic Marine or what have you. Um, so, I can draw a through line from there to here and and say that, yeah, there was a kernel that was pushing me along all the time, because a lot of decisions I've made in my life um, have been strictly my unconscious calling the shot. And it's like when I met my current wife 40 years ago, um, as soon as I met her, that was it. I was gone, and I left my wife of 17 years and my three daughters, and moved in with Debbie, and I've never regretted a moment of it since then. And I've stayed connected to my children and to a certain extent to my ex-wife, although loving her as a sister rather than my paramour now. So, uh, I can say that there were certain things that my kernel, my acorn, what have you, my Atman forced upon me. There was no decision to be made. It was just, this is it, do it, right? And probably everybody can look back on their lives and see times when they made decisions that way. It's like when I saw the Marine officer selection officer at my campus, um, he was literally surrounded by the football team, three levels deep, trying to prevent students from going to his table to talk to him. So I had to literally fight my way through the football team of my college in order to talk to the Marine recruit, the Marine officer selection officer. And but I did it. I wasn't put off by the football players, and those football players didn't serve in the Marine Corps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember tracking down my recruiter.
Yeah.
It took her like 3 months to get back with me.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it happens. So anyway, here we go. Sherry says, no, I wasn't born in Ohio, but I visited often. I was born in Alabama, but lived in New York City from 78 and Santa Monica for 10 years and traveled quite a bit back then. Yeah, I have no doubt. Sherry is one of our more awakened members here. And so going on. All right, so I'm going to talk about non-intentionality. Let me see how long this essay is. Oh, goodness, we have to keep going. All right, non-intentionality. The soul continues to reproach Jung for his impatience and desire-driven intentionality. You are full, yes. You teem with intentions and desirousness. Do you still not know that the way to truth stands open only to those without intentions? Jung ascribes this understanding to the wisdom of the East. As he wrote immediately upon stopping writing in the Red Book, Western civilization turns everything into a method and intention, as opposed to the East, where we find, quote, the art of letting things happen, action through non-action, letting go of oneself. Or, as clearly stated in the Bhagavad Gita, quote, your action is for action alone, never for the results, unquote. Well, I didn't remember that.
I think they call that bhakti yoga, where like everything you do is service.
Yeah, you're just called to do it, and you do it. And it's funny, I've done all these amazing things in my life that, people, when they hear my life story, they go, wow, you've had 9 lives. And the truth is I have 9 lives. But then my kids say, well, if you accomplished all that, why are you working here? Right?
I mean, what are you supposed to do? Just sit at home?
Yeah, what are you doing here? And I have to say that I'm just called to it. I feel called to it. I want to do it. And it's difficult work, but I like doing it. So I'm just doing it. Okay. So I don't know what the results will be, but I know that uh, in some sense it's going to make a difference. And it makes a difference to me, surely. Okay, arrogance. Over and over in the Red Book, Jung struggles to rid himself of his pride and arrogance. When the heroes of the Upanishads confront this same challenge, they discover that true recognition of the self brings a release from arrogance, and the inflated ego finds humility upon encountering the self. Thus, in a Upanishadic story, the sage Udalaka bursts the inflated ego of his arrogant son, Svetaketu, who thinks he knows everything, by showing him the great truth he does not know, namely Atman, the self. You are that. Tam Tvam Asi, he tells him. You are that. So too Jung tells his soul when she confronts him with his arrogance, your quote, your truth is hard. I want to lay down my vanity before you, since it blinds me. I did not know that I am your vessel, empty without you, but brimming over with you, unquote. Jung's redemptive understanding parallels the Upanishadic. You are that, you being that self, which is greater than you are. You possess the inward knowledge that the ego is finite and that the self within is infinite. Okay, so this is the point for everybody that's listening to this right now. All of you are that. It's not only Carl Jung that had this realization, and it's not only a 20th century, 19th, 20th century white male in Europe that has this realization. Obviously, these realizations go back thousands of years. The Bhagavad Gita goes back at least 5,000 years and has been repeated in temples um, constantly for all that time. It still is. You can still go to temples in India and find people reciting the Bhagavad Gita from memory. And you can find that at Mount Madonna in California as well. And so it's a question of going back to the beginning of your life and thinking through all, starting with where you are now, wherever you are, you, the listener, whoever you are, start with today and go backward. Start at the beginning and see that everything that you have done up until today has been guided by one thing. You are that. That's what this means. Your Atman is directing your life. We all have different opportunities. We all face different problems and different issues. But in the end, we all end up where we're meant to be. Okay, is that fair enough, Michelle? I mean,
Well, in the hero's journey, usually the hero runs away from initiation before turning around and going
oh,
through it.
sure, sure. I mean, I could have run, all of my classmates were trying to run away from Vietnam, and our current president did run away from Vietnam. And, that's part of his hero's journey. He was called to become what he is today. I'm not saying Skip approve of what he is today, but I'm saying that if you look back through his life, it's very clear that he was intended to be what he is today. And whether that um, ends up being something that we can emulate or something that we can detest for all time is still being written. But nonetheless, we have to go back through his life and see, yep, this is what he was intended to accomplish. And, um, for better or for worse. And so, but my point, Michelle, is that is this what you see in your own life, that the critical juncture, and I'm not asking you to tell me what the critical junctures are, but would you agree that the the critical junctures of your life were what they had to be?
Yeah, I would say so. And, it makes me wonder if, free will actually exists. I mean, I do think you have a choice whether or not you're going to be completely selfish or not.
Yeah.
But I actually don't think we have much of a choice beyond that.
Yep. Right. And some people are called to be the bad seed. Um, this is Hillman's point, that there are plenty of examples of people that have been terrible in history, and yet that was what they were called to be too. And you can't change that. Okay. Archifanis says, in the center, the pendulum is in perfect balance, but it must oscillate to one side or the other. Um, and that's from Steiner's Arithmetic Deception. Um, Archifanis went on, only when man shall have acquired a knowledge of all things will he be able to know himself, for things are but the boundaries of man. Amen. Uh, and that's aphorism number 48 from Dawn of Day. And Cherie responds, Bone Spurs playing golf, Trump. Right. Yeah, that's why he rides around in a cart. Okay, turning the gaze inward to the soul, the self-Atman. Jung's search for the soul shares certain features with the quest described in the Upanishads. I think that's A. Turning the gaze inward is essential to the Upanishadic teachings, and its importance is repeated countless times in the dialogues between master and pupil and by the sages themselves, who all aspire to reach beyond the manifest realm to the hidden essence of the soul, eternal, unchanging, invisible, imperishable, unaffected by the laws of the body and the material world. The Atman, here, free from evil, free from old age and death, free from sorrow. I'll read this word just a moment.
My copy says hunger and thirst.
Oh, hunger. Yeah, okay. Hunger and thirst, the self whose desires and intentions are real. That is the Atman you try to discover. B, by turning his gaze inward, Jung came to experience a revolutionary understanding of the soul. I thought and spoke much of the soul. I did not consider my soul cannot be the object of my judgment and knowledge. Much more are my judgment and knowledge objects of my soul. Hence, I had to speak to my soul as to something far off and unknown, which did not exist through me, but through whom I existed. The objective reality of the soul as prime subject elucidates Jung's affinity with Indian wisdom. In his new state, in his new state of consciousness, Jung understands that the essence of the soul eludes the materialistic and dualistic imperial approach because its very existence is the primal reality. Hence, it is the basis through which outward reality, being secondary to the soul, is apprehended. And it is the soul that gives rise to the existence and apprehends it. A similar description of Atman is found in the Upanishads. This self, Atman, of yours, he sees, but he cannot be seen. He hears, but he can't be heard. He thinks, but he can't be thought of. He perceives, but he cannot be perceived. It is this self of yours who is the inner controller. By what means can one perceive the perceiver? Oh, that's good. In like manner, Jung writes in the Red Book about the inner controller, the God within. Thus, the coming God will become the Lord of the world. This happens first in me. The supreme meaning becomes my Lord and infallible commander. C. It is the God within, the self, the unperceived perceiver, whose essence is the light that Jung is seeking in his Red Book. You would like to hear of him who was not darkened by the shadow of earth, but illuminated by it, who saw the thoughts of all, and whose thoughts no one guesses, who possessed in himself the meaning of all things, and whose meaning nothing could express. There's much written about the illuminating Atman in the Upanishads, as in the dialogue between King Janaka and Vajnavalkya.
Oh, he's the one with the dog.
Is it?
Yeah.
The sage. Okay, Janaka desires to learn the source of light in man, since all sources of light are ephemeral. And Yajnavalkya is forced to reveal the truth to him about the luminous and absolute nature of Atman. Atman is the source of his light. It is by the light of Atman that a person sits down, goes about, does his work, and returns. The Bhagavad Gita, which Jung knew well, likewise teaches about the luminous quality of Atman. That is the light, even of the lights, as beyond darkness. It is knowledge, the knowable and the known. It exists especially in the hearts of all. Thus, in the Red Book, the soul returns and insists that it is light that characterizes her. But my soul spoke to me, saying, quote, my path is light, yet I indignantly answered, do you call night what we men call the worst darkness? Do you call day night? To this my soul spoke a word that roused my anger. My light is not of this world. D. I think this is D. In the Red Book, the terms soul and self overlap to some extent and are not entirely indistinguishable. Although the soul, as anima, leads to the self, it is distinct from it. In view of the preceding passages, one might suppose that the soul is the destination of the journey, but gradually the self becomes increasingly present and asks, as I shall presently show, to be reborn as a new God. Jung was just beginning to develop his ideas on the self when he started composing the Red Book. And as he himself admits, his conceptualization of it was influenced by Nietzsche, who had been influenced in turn by the Indian concept of Atman. In the course of the Red Book journey, Jung realized his primary goal, the discovery of the self, which was to become the cornerstone of his psychological theory. Through his drawings of mandalas, Jung experienced the unconscious structuring principle in which the ruling ego is deposed in the favor of the self. Okay. Comments. Let's see how we're doing there. Okay, reading on. The mandala and the self. The mandala, a dominant ritual symbol in Indian culture, represents the cosmos and the inner dwelling place of the divine principle. During the composition of the Red Book, Jung found himself drawing mandalas as a means of calming his psychic turmoil. In his later reflections on the mandalas, he drew in the Red Book. Let me read that again. In his later reflections on the mandalas he drew in the Red Book, Jung arrived at the insights that advanced his conceptualization of the self and negated his earlier Western position vis-a-vis the centrality of the ego. Here, once again, we find Jung demonstrating his affinity with India and his views on the misguided Western approach. I acquired through them a living conception of the self. The mandala corresponds to the microstatic nature of the psyche. It had been proved to me that I had to abandon the idea of the superordinate position of the ego. Thus, in the terminology of the Upanishads, the mandala guides Jung in his development from avidya, in ignorance, to vidya, true knowledge of the self. From avidya, ignorance of the, I'm sorry, I'm going to read that sentence again, or that part again. From avidya, ignorance, to vidya, true knowledge of the self. I am the fool who lives in a dark place somewhere. In that way was my Western prejudice that I was the center of the mandala corrected. Light, or that I am everything, the whole show, the king, the God. That's the Western prejudice that I am, whoever you are, your ego says that you are everything. Well, not so much. Okay, mistaken identity of the self. A similar idea is expressed in Vajnavalkya's in the Bandaranyaka Upanishad. A person must identify himself with the self alone. Those who mistakenly identify with worldly status or other people or the gods of the whole rather than the Atman will be forsaken by that with which they have mistakenly identified. Quote, may the whole forsake anyone who considers the whole to reside in something other than in his self. Okay. Arcfanus says, we still continue to draw conclusions from judgments which we consider as false or doctrines in which we no longer believe through our feeling. Aphorism number 99. Yep. Okay, projection of the self. In the Red Book, Jung refers to the dynamics of self-projection or soul projection as a dominant driving force. If he does not find his soul, he will run after all things and will seize hold of them, but he will not find his soul, since he will not find her only in himself. Truly, his soul lies in things, and men. But the blind man seizes things in men, yet not his soul in things and men. And if I cross the world, I am ultimately doing this to find my soul. Even the dearest are themselves not the goal and end to the love that goes on seeking. They are symbols of their own souls. Here, Jung seeks the self or soul in the psyche rather than in eternal objects. The insight is very much in keeping with the words of the Upanishad sage, Vajnavalkya, when he is about to forsake his wife, met Maitreya, or Maitreya,
Matri.
and set off to live the life of an ascetic, Samyadsan. Maitreya asks him for true knowledge of the self, which is crucial to the attainment of immortality. In response, he explains the importance of holding fast to the true self because of the tendency to become confused and mistakenly identify the self with various external objects, to love them and cling to them. One holds a husband dear, you see, not out of love for the husband, rather it is out of love for the self, Atman, that one holds a husband dear. Vajnavalkya then enumerates all objects that are important to man: wife and children, wealth, gods, creatures, and everything else. You see, Maitreya, he says, it is oneself, Atman, which one should see and hear, reflect, and concentrate. Concerning the projection of the self and the illusion of redemptive love, Jung writes, consequently, we should not use the other for our own composed redemption. The other is no stepping stone for our feet. Okay, the other is no stepping stone for our feet. The need for redemption expresses itself through an increased need for love, which we think can make the other happy. But meanwhile, we are brimming with longing and desire to alter our own condition, and we love others to this end. But by ceasing to project the self onto others, we are liberated to form true relationships. Quote, selfish desire ultimately desires itself. Your desire is the father of the God. Yourself is the mother of the God. But the son of the new God, your master, is your master. Okay.
I think that's called codependency. When you try to use people, places, and things to make you feel a certain way.
Right. And what do children often do? Children um, often equate money and what money can buy with happiness. If I only had money, I would be happy. And unfortunately, for a lot of the children that I deal with, um, they are swept away by the idea that money will make them happy and therefore get involved in the illegal drug trade. And that's simply not true, as most of us of an age can tell you that money will not buy happiness. You can have everything in the world, but and turn it to gold as King Midas did, including his daughter. but it doesn't make you happy, right? And surely didn't make him happy when his daughter turned to gold. Okay, cooking right along here. So,
Oh, I wanted to tell you, I saw my animus in my dream the day
oh,
before yesterday.
oh yeah,
I did.
and what was he like?
He was very attractive and very,
Okay.
very attractive and scared the crap out of me. I was like, what is this? Go
Hmm.
away.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, that's it's good that you've had that experience. And
Yeah. Yeah, it took me like a minute to think about it because I like to analyze my dreams
mhm, very
a lot.
wise.
Yeah. Well, most of my dreams are the same.
Mhm.
Um, but I've made some progress in my dreams recently by getting into new environment. Like usually I'm in a building, but lately I've been able to make it right outside the building. So I think that's progress.
Oh, that's definitely progress because in a building suggests you're in some structure that somebody else is providing, and you're therefore living that person's life. And when you're outside the building, you're living your life. And this is uh, my children are, and when I say my children, the children that I teach um, are very off put by the fact that they have to put their cell phones aside. And and I said, why do you want to be looking at that cell phone? If you're looking at the cell phone, you're looking at somebody else's life, not yours. And and they say, well, this is part of my life. I'm alive and I'm paying attention to this. But the problem is that you're doing what somebody else wants you to do, not what you want to do. And and that's not very healthy. And yet most of these kids, when they're given a cell phone, they're sort of instantly hypnotized and sucked into their screen sucked and they cannot escape. They would look at their cell phone 24 hours a day if allowed, and and some of them are allowed, and so we have to be sensitive to the fact that we have to slowly help them break that addiction. I mean, I saw a very small version of this with one of my daughters before cell phones came along because she got addicted to watching soap operas when she was 5 years old. She was 5 years old, and she got addicted to watching soap operas when she came home from school. And she got very feisty about it and insisted on watching. And my answer to it is, well, let her do it. Just let her do it. Let her sate with it, get sated by it, because ultimately it means that she won't be so addicted to it in the future. And in a sense, that's kind of what I suggest now in terms of education, which is when they're in the eighth grade, if they choose not to go to school, give them a cell phone and say good luck to you. And if they want to go to school and learn, let them learn through the school system. But don't try to force them into as a round peg into a square hole, because the truth is that anything you need to do or know about in life now is available on social networking. You don't have to know how algebra 1 works, or what the slope intercept graph looks like. you know and I just remember Paul Simon's song, "When I think of all the crap I learned in high school, it's a wonder I can think at all." And when you look at Paul Simon's life, it's very, very clear that there was nothing in high school that was useful to him. And yet he has, even more than Bob Dylan, he deserves the Nobel Prize for Literature because he really expressed the soul of a generation in his work and is still doing it. Even in his old age, he's speaking to us, to the aged, to me, uh, with his Seven Psalms album that he just published 3 years ago. And so, and what's interesting in the Soul's Code is that um, sorry, I just lost my train of thought because I got thinking about too many things in the Soul's Code. But what's interesting in the Soul's Code is that you can see it in famous people. Okay, you can see it in our president, for example. He is archetypally an ignorant man. Okay, he doesn't know very many facts about science or a lot of things. He doesn't care about that. But he's doing what his acorn guided him to do, including, the whole bone spurs thing. He never had surgery to repair bone spurs, but yeah, he's out there golfing all the time. And at the same time, I'm called to be doing these videos every week. It's not because I'm some great hero. I'm actually pretty badly handicapped from the waist down, with 3 joint replacements, and if you were to watch me going up and down stairs, it's like a clown show. Right, it truly is. Okay, but I can still do this, and the reason I don't pump it for money is because I'm called to do it. And I don't know why I'm called to do it, but I am. And that's the way it is.
That
And
is the way it is.
yeah, and Michelle, you're here for the same reason. And it may not be something you're called to do forever, but for now you are called to do it. And so that I'm honored that you're here with me, and I invite others to join me. And I'm easy to approach. I'll put my email address in the chat right now. If you want to write to me, anybody, and talk about anything, feel free. I'm not a psychoanalyst. I'm not going to psychoanalyze you, but I'm happy to have you join us here, as Michelle has done. And I don't know how long I will do it, but I'm doing it now, and I've done it going on 10 years now, for whatever it's worth. Um, I mean, at one level, I say, okay, of my grandparents, I had very few mementos. I had, from my maternal grandmother, I had her diamond that was the diamond in her engagement ring. And when she died, my grandfather, it was a beautiful diamond. It's a 2 carat diamond. And my grandfather had it made into a pinky ring for himself. And then he died. And so I had this pinky ring, and I gave it to one of uh, my daughters, and her husband immediately started wearing it. He wanted it. So fine. But you know, my I can look back and see how my grandparents were driven by certain things, and how they too had a kernel in them. What an Atman, what Hillman calls the acorn. All of them did. Okay, and it's very easy to see. Okay, so and Cherie says, I loved Leonard Cohen also. Yeah, I mean, um, Leonard Cohen spent what, 20 or 30 years writing the song Hallelujah. And it it's written about King David's adultery. Okay, not about his heroic act of killing Samson, but or I'm sorry, was it Samson? No, he didn't kill Goliath.
Goliath.
Goliath. He killed Goliath, right? So, um, Cohen didn't write about his heroic part. He wrote about what happens to a man when he finds the right woman for him and sets everything aside. What did David do? King David, uh, he had his beloved, uh, the husband of his beloved, he arranged to be killed in battle, right? Um, so anyway, there's a wonderful video on YouTube by a man who deconstructs Hallelujah, the the Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, and what each phrase in it means. But it's really an impressive piece of work. Okay, fruits of the journey. The discovery of the self is thus not merely a psychological experience, but a profoundly religious one, a theological solution to the crisis of faith and science. I can only avow that I have experienced God, that I recognize the God by the unshakableness of the experience. The God appears to us in a certain state of the soul, unquote. Um, there's a footnote to this, so I'd like to read that footnote. And the footnote is the relationship between God and the self in the Red Book is a complex one. Jung at times identifies God with the self, and at other times distinguishes between them. Okay. For Jung, this experience of unmediated knowledge of God put to rest the religious question that had previously been the main area of his life, main axis of his life. From earliest childhood, Jung, the pastor's son, had endured religious torments arising from an acute awareness of God's darker side that left him frightened and perplexed. His childhood experience of the death of God in church sheds light on his later horrified identification with Nietzsche, who declared the death of God. Nietzsche's declaration of the death of God is reflected in the disappointment in Christianity expressed by positivists and materialists. Jung viewed European culture as suffering from a barbarically one-sided position that debased religion and devalued the irrational. The Red Book was written in the aftermath of Jung's departure from Freud, who had warned him to resist the attraction of the occult. Jung, however, resisted the spirit of the times and sought instead an alternative that would leave room for the spirit of the depths. But lacking a mediating function in his experience of the numinous, he needed to create a mediating myth. Thus, the Red Book might also be understood as an answer to Nietzsche. The old Judeo-Christian God had died, but in his place, a new God had been born. Jung, as Murray Stein explains, called the Red Book by the monumental name of Liber Novus, new book, to postulate a new theology, a type of New Testament intended for the consciousness of a new age. This New Testament was a response to the author's theological and psychological torments, and in it too, India is present in a particular, partially veiled but significant manner. The new God of the Red Book is colored by Jung's understanding of the Indian concept of godhood. Jung's new God is Atman-like in two aspects. He is born in the soul, and unlike the all-good Christian God, he embraces all opposites. Okay. Let's talk about this for a moment. It's possible to know God. Okay. When Jung was asked, do you believe in God? Do you believe in God? His answer was, well, very complicated, but I have no need to believe. I know. And when he said that, the first time I saw that video, it immediately resonated with me because I know too. And I know where God is and how God goes about doing the work of the Godhead. And that's what Jung brought back. Nietzsche's point was that through the scientific method of the previous 500 years, from the time of Copernicus and Galileo, they had proven that the God of kindergarten or Bible school, the God that we talk of as up above, we point to the heavens for, that God does not exist. There's no such thing. And by the middle of the 18th century, and actually by the time of Galileo, but certainly by the middle of the 18th century, most people in the West, at least, knew this. And presumably the Indians knew it long before we Westerners got out of diapers. So, um, so what Nietzsche said was correct, that if you're going to believe in some magic creature, who's going to come down and touch you and save your life in a terrible time or whatever, what have you, that ain't happening. And so but what you have to understand is what is in your heart. And that is that's Atman in the Indian sense. Um, it is what will save you. When you say a prayer, if you're going into battle and you say a prayer, it's trying to activate that part of yourself that will make it so you survive the battle. And maybe you won't, because of the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. But 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 if God is going to save you, it is the God within, or it is the collective unconscious, the combination of all your brethren. This is why I'm so adamant about the U.S. Marine Corps, because if I'm ever in a trench fighting a battle, I always want Marines next to me, because I always know that they have been touched by the same thing as I have been. And so, I'm not casting aspersions on the Army, Michelle, because the Army does the same thing. They describe it a little bit differently, but it's all the um, it is
Well,
all a
the
reliance on
uh,
what your brothers and sisters will do in battle.
the thing about the army was like I went into it thinking I was like one kind of person, but like the tests like that they gave me, like they were like, you're way too good at electronics to be taking this job. We want you to do this. And I was like, I'm not smart enough to do that. Um, I've never taken classes for that. And they were like, do it, you can do it. And they were right.
Mhm.
And that just really like amazes me, like how they saw something I didn't know was there.
Mhm. Well, and through tradition, militaries throughout the world for time immemorial have learned what works and what doesn't work to activate in a young person what they need to be in battle, whatever it was, whether it was what you need to be in battle with a sword and a shield or a bow and arrow, and what you needed to be in battle with a type of weapon that I don't even know anymore. Uh, I don't even know what the rifle is that we use in the Marine Corps anymore. The one I learned was on an M14, worked perfectly well in my time, but nobody ever gave me an M14 in battle. I ended up carrying an M16 once. The rest of the time, I wore my sidearm at appropriate times, and that wasn't always. And so, but I almost never wore my sidearm uh, when I was in Vietnam. And the reason is because uh, as an officer, it was my job to lead and not to shoot or fight. And
Tell
if
that to
I,
the officers now.
huh?
Tell that to the officers now.
What about officers now?
Yeah, I don't know. Just hearing them talk, it's like they think they're a movie star in some action film.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, uh, that fits in with the story about apocryphal story of um, the fact that the average life expectancy of a second lieutenant in battle is 15 seconds. And The reason is because they get a bullet in the back of their head from their platoon sergeant. So that he can then lead the troops because the arrogant officer uh, who thinks he's God gift to the world is just going to get everybody killed. And um, and
Yeah, and they never learn that that's going to happen. They
yeah,
never learn.
they never learn. And the one there's one tiny aspect of James Tillman's book uh, that really offended me, and that was that he used Oliver North as an example, uh, and it clearly showed that um, Hillman had no clue what Oliver North's real character is. Okay,
Mm. I
no
don't know who that
clue.
is.
You don't know who Oliver North is? Oh my God.
Who is
Uh,
it?
well, he was during the Iran Contra controversy. He was the Marine Lieutenant Colonel. He was a classmate of mine at the basic school, graduate of the Naval Academy. Um, but he had wheedled his way into being an aide to the president. Okay. And the president has a lot of aides around. Okay. In any event, you'll see lieutenants, lieutenant commanders, majors, and lieutenant colonels sometimes um, being around, but mostly they serve as security officers or people who wear dress uniforms, right? I met George W. Bush one time because of my son-in-law, um, and and this nice major came over, and when it was time to go meet him and escorted us, but her job was really to defend the president, and in case I did something other than to shake his hand, right? and so that was her job, and so it looks impressive to see all these young officers standing around at a cocktail party, but really they're there to break your neck if you do anything that you shouldn't be doing. But anyway, let's talk about the fruits of the journey because we have uh, let's see. Okay,
I
we have
think Jung said something like, when you realize everything had a meaning, like when you look back and find like everything did like fall into place.
yeah.
And but we live in the present and we want to have that guarantee that it'll happen again in the future.
Yeah, there's no guarantees.
Yeah,
Right. But
right.
mind you, what Jung finally said late in life in his letter to David Cox, the Reverend David Cox, was that God is, each of us carries our own image of God in our heart. And um, and the all-knowing God is the God that is represented in the collective unconscious, however big that may be. And so it isn't to say that there is one God for everybody, because Americans know God differently than people who are born in other countries. And yet people who are born in other countries who come and become American then are experience the God of the collective unconscious of America. And so, we're sort of seeing that right now in our current affairs, it takes time to find its way through, but it does out in the end. And so
It is
anyway,
very interesting. Like I was thinking that there was going to be like a musical revolution, and there is. Like
mhm.
I, but instead of making new music, the kids on TikTok are playing like Cat Stevens, like all that stuff from back then. It's
Well, they're
resonating with them.
yeah, they're finding what they're finding. One of the things they're finding out is that heavy metal, you know, that gets to you in a certain way, of course, but the people who were really composers were people like were people like um, sorry, I'm having a senior moment. uh anyway, um Paul Simon. Okay, people like Paul Simon. And who's the guy that won the Nobel Prize? I'm sorry. It is a senior moment. Um, Nobel Prize for Literature. Um,
Oh, I wouldn't know.
my God. Anyway, he played cacophonous music with his harmonica and his what am I thinking? Bob Dylan. Okay, so Bob Dylan wins the Nobel Prize for Literature, and he said a lot of important things in his life. There's no doubt, and I have to acknowledge that the Nobel Committee did right by naming him um, the prize winner for literature one year. Um, but his music wasn't really my taste in music, but I do acknowledge that from a literature point of view, his lyrics are right up there with Gabriel Garcia Marquez, who's one of my favorite writers. And but the same is true of Paul Simon. Um, and Paul Simon did it more melodically, in my view, and therefore also deserves the Nobel Prize for Literature. Um, but what what they did, what both of them did, was write things that get through to human beings everywhere in the world, to the collective unconscious. So if you go in any elevator in the world today, you may very likely in the muzak that they're playing on the elevator hear Paul Simon's Graceland being played. Okay. And I've heard that all over the world. I mean, in Saudi Arabia, they play it in the elevators of the five-star hotels, right? And and so it resonates with everyone. Okay. And so therefore it is a representation of the collective unconscious. Okay. And in that sense, um, it's very special and special to everyone. I mean, it's like why is Clarissa Pinkolastes' book "Women Are Running with the Wolves"? It resonates in everywhere. It's been translated into more than 20 languages, um, and including Chinese and Russian and you name it. So it resonates with everyone. Um, and so that's the part of the collective unconscious too. And why am I still here? Why are we still here having this conversation today, 10 years after I started doing this? it's because I have followers like Cherie and Archifanis and Michelle and uh, Justin Case is here, who's someone who used to come very regularly. I'm glad to see you here, Justin. Uh, and Richard and all the regulars, Art Patterson, everybody that comes here every week. It resonates with all of us, including me. I'm part of it. And so anyway, um, so how do you connect with that? I don't know, but one of the things that you need to do is to think about what is your Atman, what is your kernel. Go back through your life and draw the through line. Draw the through line of your life. What this to this to this. You can think of yourself as Tarzan and Jane swinging through the jungle of all the things that got passed away from your life, but you're doing this, you're here. And, and so Michelle, in terms of your life, you can start with today. And why are you here today? And you got here because of something that has been happening for quite a few years now, because you've been following me for a long while. And so there was something that led to that and drew you here. And the same with all the regular followers here, that something led to that, and something before that led to that point, and so on. So if you draw a through line through your life, you can go back and start to see the outlines of your kernel, your acorn. Also, you can say your Atman, I guess. But anyway, we have a short period of time, and I have 4 more pages in this essay. And so what I'd like to do is read on through, and with short comments on each section, because there's several sections here. Okay, so let's talk about the fruits of the journey. The discovery of the self is thus not merely a psychological experience, but a profoundly religious one, a theological solution to the crisis of faith and science. I can only avow that I have experienced God, that I recognize the God by the unshakableness of the experience. The God appears to us in a certain state of the soul. Did I already read this section?
I already had it highlighted. I think,
Yeah, I think I did.
yeah, I think we're
Okay.
on Birth of the Inner God.
Right, birth of the inner God. Excuse me. So, birth of the inner God. We now recognize that the anointed of this time is a God who does not appear in the flesh. He is no man, and yet is the Son of Man, but in spirit and not in flesh. Hence, he can be born only through the spirit of men as the conceiving womb of the God, unquote. In the Red Book, this God is born within man's spirit and exists in the inner reality of fantasy. At the center of Jung's New Testament is the divinization of the human. The new God is born through the the new God is born through the conscious, unconscious inspiration of Upanishadic literature. Jung's contemporaneous writings offer further reflections on the divine essence of Atman as identical with Brahman, the divine element of the cosmos. Brahman unifies man's inner essence with the cosmic essence beyond it, both self and divine. Indian divinity exists within the soul, and it is also the essence of the cosmos that unifies the opposites. Okay. Unifying the opposites. The opposites that sundered Jung in his Red Book are the spirit of the depths and the spirit of this time. These cause him to vacillate between good and evil, introversion and extroversion, east and west, rational and irrational, and the conscious and unconscious. Throughout the book, Jung wears various conflicting identities in his encounters with inner figures. When faced with the laughing Satan, he becomes a grim religious Christian. When facing the monotheistic Christian ascetic, he becomes a pagan screaming out his prayer to the sun god. Facing Iztabar of the East, he takes on the scientific pose of the West and refutes the existence not only of the sun god, but of any god at all. Throughout, Jung is unable to imitate the Son of God, who is wholly good, dangerously incomplete, and one-sided. Thus, the external God, who is wholly good, dies, and a new God is born out of the opposites in his soul. The divine the divine child approached me out of the terrible ambiguity, the hateful beautiful, the evil good, the laughable serious, and the sick healthy, the inhuman human, and the ungodly godly. How can a man live in the womb of the God if the Godhead himself attends only to one half of him?
That's a
This
good
guy,
one.
pardon?
That's a good one. I highlighted
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Okay, this God comprising the opposites is inspired by Atman and Brahman. In Jung's 2021 book, Psychological Types, he writes extensively about Atman, evidently following his experiential discoveries in the Red Book, and relates to Atman Brahman primarily as uniting symbols. Brahman is the union and dissolution of all opposites, and at the same time stands outside them as the irrational factor, wholly beyond cognition and comprehension. It is a divine entity at once the self, the deliverance from the flux of effects, from the tension of opposites, synonymous with the way of redemption that gradually leads to Brahman. This is the God born anew in the Red Book, who brings redemption to Jung's tortured soul and appears as various figures of united opposites, such as the Gnostic Abraxas, or the divine child holding a black snake in one hand and a white snake in the other, or the divine son of the frog and the witch who rises up to the divine realm, leaving his father, Jung, to yearn for him in the human realm. Okay, I want to interrupt just for a moment to talk about the significance of symbols and symbol, because the point is that in all the opposites, you can't come to a resolution. The pendulum always swings, okay, between the two sides. But the symbol can unite the sides, okay? And so when the symbol comes forth, this is why Jung's last book, the book that was contains his essay completed 10 days before the end of his life, is called Man and His Symbols, because the symbols are what emerge as the resolution of the opposites. Okay. And that's what the cross does. The cross, the above and the below, the left and the right. Okay. Um, and the Star of David does this, and the um, the symbol of Islam does this with the moon and the stars. And the star, um, one is the creator of light and one is the reflection of light, obviously. And so those can't
Yeah.
be adequately described.
And then there's
Ultimately,
the sign of Aquarius with the man pouring the water.
right?
And Aquarius is actually an air sign, not a water sign.
Hmm.
Um, and it's about turning your spirit into matter. That's what the symbol um,
Right.
represents.
And it's wisdom being poured into mankind.
Oh, those.
Yeah. Now, I would argue because we created this statuette about this, which you might not remember, but it's called the Water Bearer. And in that statue, the person who's doing the pouring is a woman, and it's Sophia, uh, because Sophia this is the symbol in the Bible, in fact, of um, of wisdom. She identifies herself as wisdom in Proverbs 8, um,
Mm.
11 through 32, I believe is the
Okay.
okay. So she's called. I mean, remember that philosophy means the love of Sophia. It means the love of wisdom. Okay, and so um, and we Protestants especially have gotten away from that because it became highly patriarchal, and we need to get back and understand it because it. But nonetheless, it is in the Bible that if you depending on whose Bible you read, it's I Sophia or it's I wisdom, and wisdom is the patriarchal way of writing Sophia and the feminine out of the Bible, but nonetheless, she's there, whether you
Hmm.
call her Sophia or not. And so, anyway, so the importance of symbols as in dreams. Okay, if you have a dream that's causing you problems, okay, you have a nightmare. Okay, a nightmare will often provide you with a symbol. Okay, it will also very often answer its its own problem with a symbol of redemption. Okay, which cannot be described because if it's completely mansplained, as Freud wanted to do, if it's completely mansplained, then you write the meaning out of it. You have to just contemplate the symbol. You can't. There's no. Can I write the meaning of the symbol of the cross? No, I can't. Not by any stretch of the imagination. The whole Bible is is only a start to the meaning of the symbol of the cross and what's behind it. Can I and it's the same with the word. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. Well, you know, what's a word? A word's nothing but a symbol, but the word in this case has the whole of Western thought behind it. The word in that passage in the Bible, the word is a completely fraught symbol, which you could never, you could write 1,000 books and you would never get to the bottom of it. Okay, that's the thing. And so you have to simply accept in your heart that the word is the word. And it's like when you're reading a novel, when you read a novel, you actually, most people, I think, actually see the movie of the novel going by their mind's eye. I mean, nobody would read a novel if it was only just a bunch of words stuck together, right? But because each word is symbolic and um, and creates a picture, the great writers create a picture in your mind and carry it through, right? And you see that picture that is symbolized by the words. So your psyche is not seeing the words, your psyche is seeing the picture that the great writer is writing about. I mean, including Bob Dylan and including Paul Simon, right? If I take uh, Paul Simon's first words in the song Kodachrome, um, and he says, when I think of all the crap I learned in high school, it's a wonder I can think at all. Obviously, okay, because it's not about any of that. Life is not about any of that. The trouble is that you have to learn all of that before you can make judgments based on the symbols that you face later in your life, in your adulthood, right?
Yeah.
And so if I take algebra one, okay, I didn't study algebra one since 1960, and now I'm co-teaching an algebra one class, and I don't necessarily understand the formula either. I'm having to learn it like my children are having to learn it because math has changed over that 65 years. And yet, um, and I've never once used an algebra one problem consciously. Okay, in my whole life, including founding a public company, being a lawyer, everything. I've never consciously used an algebra one problem. However, the algebra one problems that I learned back then guided me to learn the other things that I learned in my life. And so I can't argue them away. I can't say they're unimportant. Okay, I can say that Paul Simon was right. If I think of all the crap I learned in high school, it's a wonder I can think at all. But that's the symbol, the word wonder. You can think after going through that because you've been guided through the basics that you needed before you could get into adulthood.
You have to learn the rules before you can break them.
Yeah, that's it. Like that. Okay. All right. Enough of that homily. Carrying on. With the birth of good and evil God, Jung longs for release from the grip of all attributes, good and evil. Quote, if your virtues hinder you from salvation, discard them, since they have become evil to you. The slave to virtue finds the way as little as the slave to the vices. Unquote. Here, Jung alludes to Indian equanimity in the face of moral opposites, as in the passage from the Upanishads, which he quotes from in Psychological Types. Quote, then, just as one driving a chariot looks down upon the two chariot wheels, so he looks down upon day and night. good deeds and evil, deeds and upon all the pairs of opposites. This resolution of intensive opposites brings Jung new hope, but also new fear, fear of the freezing of life. How will it be now that God and the devil have become one? Are they in agreement to bring life to a standstill? Thus, the conflict of the opposites belong to the inescapable conditions of life. Does he who recognizes and lives the unity of the opposites stand still? This fear is at the root of Jung's impending aversion to the Indian ideal of uniting opposites, although at this stage the Indian solution fills him with wonder. As he writes in Psychological Types, the myth of the renewed God symbolically depicts the human longing for redemption from psychic split, and Indian wisdom represents a different solution to the problem of opposites. Quote, since the middle position as function of mediation between the opposites possesses an irrational character and is still unconscious, it appears projected in the form of a mediating God, a Messiah. The East has for thousands of years been familiar with this process and has founded on it a psychological doctrine of salvation, which brings the way of deliverance within man's ken and capacity. Quote. Okay, last page and a half, completing the Red Book. Jung, riven by opposites, had embarked on the Red Book journey to seek relief for his spiritual and emotional anguish. This was a search after his soul and for faith in a new God. The solutions he found in Western culture had proved inadequate, and his journey led him to the insights of Indian wisdom, where he was able to discern the deepest essence of the self. In 1928, when he came across the translation of an ancient Chinese text, The Secret of the Golden Flower, he was so astounded, that he abruptly left off his writing of the Red Book. The explanation he gave for this is that the great affinity he had felt with the East supported the psychological research he had been engaged in all along. There, the contents of this book found their way into actuality, and I could no longer continue working on it. Jung's encounter with the Eastern text penetrated deep into the loneliness experienced during his inner journey, the loneliness of a tormented man whose soul had torn him away from his culture, its faith, and its values, and it offered an external significance of his private inward experience. Conclusion. The Red Book was the prima materia of Jung's life work, and India served as a major source of inspiration in his developing theory. Both were marginalized in his scientific writings secretly for many years, but as Jung lay dreaming between life and death, the Indian yogi returned to him as a guide embodying the eternal self-dreaming, the ephemeral Jung. India returned to, and this Indian yogi came to him while he was recovering from his heart attack in 1944, just
Oh.
so you know. Um, and it's also mentioned in The Analyst and the Rabbi, which is the play that I acted in with John Jackson and Sherry Lovler in 2022. You can find that play. It's a 1 hour, 1 act play that you can find on here in this YouTube channel. Okay, conclusion. The Red Book was the prima materia of Jung's life work, and India served as a major source of inspiration in his developing theory. Both were marginalized in his scientific writings, secreted for many years. But as Jung lay dreaming between life and death, the Indian yogi returned to him as a guide embodying the eternal self, dreaming the ephemeral India returned to heal Jung's consciousness, just like Izdubar, who had seemed dead forever but emerged full force. So one used to believe that one can murder a god, but the god was saved. He forged a new axe in the fire and plunged again into the flood of fire of the east to resume his ancient cycle. But we clever men crept around lamed and poisoned and did not even know that we lacked something. The Red Book opens a horizon of hope for our age and our fragmented world, in which longing for otherness has turned into hatred and alienation. The Red Book, Jung's intrapsychic dialogue of cultures and its ardent movements between East and West, gave birth to a multifaceted world that harbors a healing and fruitful tension between the world's cultures. Instead of having them as unreconciled opposites, Jung shows the way in his Red Book for achieving a united world of a rich diversity, which brings man closer and closer to become whole. That's the end of that essay. Okay, well, we've seen an example of it in our current affairs in the last week, because our red state, blue state business has seemed intractable, and it couldn't be resolved. But what has emerged from the collective unconscious now is not that the red states will always prevail, but that also the blue states, the blue, can also be recognized and has been recognized in our electorate. And so the need is for us to recognize that we have to find a balance. And so this is why you may not be able to see it on YouTube, but my shirt is purple. Okay. And I took up wearing purple several years ago when I wanted to symbolize the combination of red and blue, because there's some things about the red point of view, so-called red point of view, that I also agree with, very much so. When I was in college and I joined the U.S. Marines, as I said, my college has always been a little lefty college. And so I was seen as a Nazi by my classmates because I went to OCS between junior and senior year of college. And so I came back for my senior year and I had my hair cut short as it is today. And they all thought that I was hyper conservative. And yet today, I'm probably, save for one, I'm probably the most liberal member of my class today, and probably recognized as such. And all of my friends and classmates who thought I was a Nazi in 1967, 68, now see that that wasn't true at all, and that my the uniform that I wore on my graduation day. Uh, and when I went and swore my second oath to the Constitution, was symbolic of something else. It wasn't symbolic of being what we today would call red, um, from the red side of the American political spectrum. It was symbolic of something else. It was symbolic of purpleness, not redness. and and my dress uniform, which I will wear tomorrow, is uh, navy blue and red. It has both colors, and 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 the results of the election this week are a symbol of the fact that we need to find a middle ground, okay, in our country. And we all
Yeah.
need to think about how that has to happen. Um,
I was shocked. I
Pardon?
mean, I was shocked. I didn't think it was going to happen.
You didn't think that
He
we
could
would,
win. No.
who he?
Oh man, Donnie, the
Oh, Mamzani. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
no, I had no doubt that he would win.
I was like, no way. No.
And so who would have won if not him?
I think
Cuomo,
Como,
the
the guy who
philanderer.
was in his basement the whole COVID. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
I remember when he emerged for the first time. That was good. Um, but talking about symbols, I wanted to talk about the symbol of the phoenix, which is
Hmm.
really big in the
Yeah.
X-Men. The like Jean Grey is the phoenix,
Uh-huh.
and she does amazing things as the phoenix,
Hmm.
and she's so powerful that Wolverine, who loves her, has to kill her. Um, and then in Harry Potter, there's the phoenix, and the phoenix is a representation of dying to your old way of life and being reborn into a new, which I think is really cool.
Well, the phoenix is also a symbol of the feminine, uh,
Oh,
and
really?
and the opposite of the phoenix is the dragon. And the reason I know this is because um, the school
Oh,
that I teach at is called Phoenix Academy,
oh,
and
really?
yeah, and we take all the bad boys from a local middle school uh, whose whose mascot is the dragon, and um, and so I've researched this very heavily, uh, and I didn't know why at the time, but um, I found when I was in Hong Kong, I found a area rug of the dragon and the phoenix, which is a very big deal in Chinese culture. And and so I brought it home, and it's still in my kitchen. It's on the floor of my kitchen, and it's the dragon and the phoenix having their fight. Uh, and and it's the masculine and the feminine having their inevitable fight between one another.
The endless fight.
Endless fight.
Just admit that I'm right.
Well, and they're in the position of the yin yang, right? So that in their fight, they look like they're connected together like yin yang. And so,
Well, I'll have to look up that symbol.
yeah. But anyway, the phoenix is definitely a symbol of the feminine.
Oh,
And the dragon, uh, the dragon in Chinese culture was a symbol of rain coming over the mountain. People would look up in the sky and they would see a dragon. Uh, and so that's where the dragon comes from in Chinese culture. But it meant that the dragon would provide the water that would um, allow the crops to grow, allow the feminine to do her thing to create the next generation.
it would
To
be the male because the rain to fertilize the earth, so it would be
right,
a man.
right, and so that's what it represents, and the earth is the feminine that produces everything we rely on. I mean, everything that we rely on in our lives is from Mother Earth at the most basic level. Everything that we have and ever have had in the history of all creatures came from um, the earth. And that's why it's Mother Earth, right? And let's see, I think I can show, let me see if I can show, I'm not sure I can right now. Oh, no, maybe I can. I'll show you my recent painting, which actually that's one, but just a second. Okay, coming up. Just a second. Now, come on. Too much junk here. Nope, that's not it. I don't know why I'm having such problems here finding my own
Oh,
paintings.
I think Mercury retrograde started today.
Mercury retrograde, that must
Yeah.
be the reason.
Yeah.
Oh God. Oh, here it is. Here's the painting that I was thinking of. It's finally been properly framed. It was framed in black before, and that was not good. But this is my idea of evolution here. Oh, come on. There's a nuance in there. Here we go. So this is tail of the whale, a whale of the tail of the whale evolution. And this is looking, the perspective is you're lying on the bottom of the sea, looking up through the water column at the light. And there's all these critters and creatures around you, including two whales at the bottom, the mother and the baby whale, and lots of other things. I mean, I can expand it properly, but the point is that the upper right is the lighter part of the ocean that if you were lying on the bottom of the ocean, you'd be looking up and there'd be a direct light and then diffused light in the area that is shallower. That is how our ancestors who emerged from the sea found the way to the shore. And so probably there were whales long before there were human beings. And so that's the idea of it. Now, if I expand it, uh, there you can see that down here in the wisdom part, there are a lot of other creatures down there. in the dark. Okay, they're in the dark, but they're the wisdom, representing wisdom. Um, anyway, that's that painting is going to my number 3 grandson.
I like the journey upwards, the journey up towards the light.
Yeah, and then well, this is my most recent painting. I can show that as well. Um, okay, this is the one I just finished this morning, and this is called the 6 million-year-old man. And uh, here you can make out in the center uh, the head of the 6 million-year-old man. Here's his nose and his eyes, and he's he's very light because we're all descended from this person, not necessarily a man. It's a human, and so all of our ancestors are in this painting. And what isn't finished in this shot of it is this lower left, which is the creative wellspring that I have now given the Rocky treatment to that part as well. So you find lots and lots of creatures that have been part of our evolution. And we all are still peopled by this 6 million-year-old man who is, represents the evolution of all of humanity from the beginning. Every human being has parts of the 6 million-year-old man in us. He lives in all of us, in fact. So anyway, for what that's worth. Okay, that's a painting I did for another grandson who was my number 5 grandson. I have 7 of them.
Like the seven dwarfs.
Well, actually, one of them is quite short still. He's 7 years old. But anyway, they're all going to be amazing young people. So next week, we will be reading about a lesson in peacemaking, the mystery of self-sacrifice in the Red Book by Gunther Longweiler. And I'll just read the Jung quote that he chose to begin his essay. They will all become terribly enraptured by these tremendous experiences, and in their blindness will want to understand them as outer events. It is an inner happening. That is the way of the perfection of the mystery of Christ, so that the peoples learn self-sacrifice. May the frightfulness become so great that it can turn man's eyes inward. CGO. Okay, so we will be reading that next week. And thank you very much for being here, Michelle. Maybe you and I can do Mako over Christmas, over my Christmas
Yeah, that would be
holiday.
great because there is a female president now.
Yeah, in Japan, right? Mako actually predicted the first woman prime minister of Japan and actually predicted it at about the right time. Mako actually predicts it for the 20 teens, and now in 2025, so she's about a decade late, but she was uh, prefigured by Mako. And so are you working every day? What is your schedule?
Um, no, it's very like haphazard.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'm doing merchandise for my husband's band. It's just very haphazard.
Okay.
But
Well,
I'm off on Sundays. Um,
I
so
mean, we can probably only manage an hour or two a day. And we can certainly read it. You can read the feminine parts and I can read the masculine parts or something like that.
oh, that would be cool.
Um, and so we're talking about the novel Mako Memoirs of a Woman, which is my 1993 novel. You can find it on YouTube, or I'm sorry, on Amazon. You can find it on Kindle. It's only available on Kindle. And and Michelle and I are going to read it, so then there will be an audible version of it, uh, and we will share the proceeds. So far, I've made on this novel, I probably have made $100. But but now that there is in fact a woman prime minister of Japan, now people might take some more interest in it.
Yeah, her purse, like everyone is going crazy for trying to get the same purse.
Oh my God. Okay. Uh, and Arcafina says the Wicked Witch of the South, the Mexican presidentess. Okay. Um, so Cherie said, I love Bill Moyers. He also had a series with Joseph Campbell, The Power of Myth, rest in peace, on the property of the filmmaker of Star Wars. Who was A in the first film, Star Wars? Uh, uh, okay, maybe I didn't go back far enough uh, in this uh, YouTube discussion. Um, I, am not connecting up with this discussion. Arcofanes mentions Anakin Skywalker, who obviously was Darth Vader later on. Um, and yeah, I guess the meeting with the new female prime minister was quite the circus with our friend the president. Why did Shinzo Abe get assassinated? I did not know that. Um, and I don't know if that means physically assassinated or only assassinated and politically. What will happen now? The president wants to be in Venezuela.
Yeah. Definitely have to show up next week so we can learn about peace.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I saw a quote. It was like something, and it said, diplomacy is for your enemies, not just your friends.
Yeah, Well, Archimedes wants to do away with, uh, or I'm sorry, Cherie that wants to do away with the Nobel Awards. And, I say that the Nobel Awards are symbolic. They are symbols, and they're symbols of a collective, and a collective of Norwegians who make the decisions. And so, anyway,
The table?
I'll I'm
5 more
gonna
minutes.
I'm gonna let you go, Michelle, because
I'm
we're
sorry.
gonna no, it's all right. We're done. We've been here a long while now, so
Okay.
I'm gonna wish everybody a good week, and we'll talk again next week. And
Yes, next week.
please feel free to join uh, our advanced reading group, if you will. Um, let's see, did I? So, Michelle, I'm the only thing I'm going to do next is I'm going to put up the advanced reading group link on the YouTube channel so that anybody who's watching now can capture it if they wish. I've got to find it again. All right, so this is the link to the advanced reading group if you wish to attend. You may. And please capture it right now if you're thinking about joining us, because as soon as I hang up from this session, it will disappear. But anyway, thank you all for being here.
Bye.
And thank you so much for joining me today, Michelle. That's wonderful and very much appreciated. Let's see, how do I get out of this now? Okay, peace, everyone. Bye-bye.